Thank you, Abdul. So, as Abdul says, I'm going to look at how we at Bagnall's align social value from some of the projects we undertake to some of the UN SDGs. And I'm going to try and do this throughout using real life case studies from the work that we've done, just to try and make it a little bit more real for you guys. Um, I suppose the starting point is trying to understand why this is so important and why this is so important now. We know that social value is becoming increasingly important, not just in the UK, but globally. I think it's well renowned that the UK was one of the first sort of governments to legislate for social value to be included in government procurement in the under the sort of Social Value Act of 2012. We know that's getting replicated in other countries such as Canada. Countries in the EU are also looking at sort of mimicking a similar sort of legislation. In 2023, the new Procurement Act in the UK added more significance to the social value. And the key change was that social value is no longer to be considered when doing public procurement, but actually it's a necessity now to maximise public benefit. Um, you may well be aware that the minimum percentage weighting that social value is given in contracts and tendering documents now is at the minimum of 10% for public sector. It can be anything up to 30%. And as a result of the government being committed to the UN SDGs, the Act makes sure that any social value is aligned alongside those as well. So I'm just going to give you an example about how we have tried to meet the requirements of this Act. A little bit about me. I'm not going to go into too much detail. So as Abdul said, I'm the Sustainability and Compliance Manager at Bagnall's. We're a fifth generation painting contractor in the UK, established in 1875. So we celebrated our 150th anniversary last year. And I think that's quite a key thing, being a family business, because as it was, you'll see throughout the presentation, social values kind of embedded within our sort of ethos as a business. Through my sort of day-to-day role, I'm responsible for the sustainability program, writing, managing, and monitoring our carbon reduction plan. I'm also in charge of our social value program, which we call Community Paintbrush, which I'll go into a little bit more detail later. And then I am responsible for the compliance and the accreditations that we have to do, not just in social value and sustainability, but health and safety as well. I've got a practitioner membership of ISEP, which used to be IEMA, and I'm currently studying a level 7 apprenticeship in sustainable business specialism with an MSc in sustainability at Cranfield University in the UK. Hopefully, by the end of today, you'll understand how we align social value. So I'm getting a little bit of feedback off somebody. So you'll understand how we align social value at Bagnall's alongside the SDGs and how we monitor and measure the impact. I'll show you some example case studies of things that we've conducted in the UK the last year. I'll tell you sort of what we did, why we did it, how we reported it, and then how we measured the impact of that. And then the key thing, I think, it's to try and give confidence in that what you're already doing is probably already likely aligned to the SDGs. So you're not having to rip up the rule book and start again. What you're doing is definitely better than doing nothing. And then hopefully show that what you're doing is having a positive impact on communities across the UK or the local communities in which you're working. All the images and stuff that you'll see on the slide are examples of social value projects which we've completed in some of our local areas as well. So to split that up into three different bits, I'm just going to very briefly give an overview of sustainability at Bagnall's. So our sustainability program is called Painting a Greener Future. The reason why I'm going to go into sustainability in general is it'll hopefully break down what we then mean by Community Paintbrush, which is our social value program, as well as giving you some of the case studies. So to start from the beginning, social value has a couple of different definitions. I've just taken two here, one from the Social Value Portal, which is a UK-based organisation, which was one of the first in the UK to measure social value and the impact of social value. But they say it's about having a positive impact on society beyond your financial bottom line. And then the Local Government Association in the UK says it's about how we can improve economic, social, and environmental well-being of an area. And the key thing that both organisations say is if you're hiring local people, if you're buying local products, if you're providing training to your current staff, providing apprenticeships, reducing your emissions, providing volunteer opportunities, or supporting community groups, you're already creating social value. I think the difficult thing then is how we actually report and record all that. Again, we'll all be aware that there are 17 goals for the UN SDGs, which were started in 2015 or adopted by the member states. And the key thing is that they recognise that tackling climate change and inequalities are intrinsically linked. And when you see those 17 goals at a sort of a top level, you kind of think we could maybe sort of work towards some of these, but then they also look very big. And what I found as a business and then as an individual project, it's very difficult for us to quantify how we can actually hit each of those sustainable goals and how and sort of measure what impact we're actually having towards those goals. So when we sort of looked at this and when I revamped the program, I kind of tried to take the SDGs and look at them a more local focus rather than as a global impact, thinking if we can do something locally and if other businesses and projects do things locally, then actually overall on the global scale, it's going to have a much bigger impact. So as I mentioned, our sustainability program here at Bagnall's is called Painting a Greener Future. Obviously, play on the pun of sort of our industry. Painting a Greener Future incorporates sort of four key principles. Obviously, the environment, which is to help reduce our impact, whether that's through carbon reduction or waste reduction. People and culture. So one of our core company values is people, but they go alongside safety, integrity, and respect. And everything that we do and all our policies and strategies are all underpinned by those four values. So it was key that we had to have a people and culture section within our sustainability program. Training, education, apprenticeships, colleague development is a key thing. We've got, lots of members of staff who even the sort of the team on the tools have been working with us for nearly 50 years. So it's about the sort of that longevity, but whilst bringing in sort of new young people to bring new ideas in there. So apprenticeships and colleague development is a key thing for our business. And then the final pillar of our program is Community Paintbrush, which is the social value program, which I'll go into in a bit more detail. As I mentioned at the start, as a family-owned business, supporting the local community has been sort of key since we were established. We were set up by Alfred Bagnall in 1875 to paint a bridge in Shipley in West Yorkshire. And then the business has slowly grown so that we're now sort of UK wide. We've got branches, dotted across the UK, and we cover everything from the sort of the very north of Scotland to the Channel Islands and everything in between. And one of the key things that sort of Alfred instilled in his sons who took over the business and then subsequent generations is it's not just about sort of painting and improving the area because we're getting paid for it, but it's about adding sort of additional impact and value to those areas. I talked about training education being key. Apprenticeships is a massive thing for us here. We actually employed our first apprentice, Walter Unwin, in 1877, and we've taken on painting and decorating apprentices ever since. We've just reopened, we've just opened a new head office building. That one of our buildings and our office space is actually named after Walter Unwin as a bit of a nod back to sort of him being the pioneer for apprenticeships here. A couple of the things that we're accredited with in terms of our sustainability program. We're a member of the Armed Forces Covenant in the UK. We're signed supporters of the Paint Green, which is an industry-wide commitment to reducing our waste, carbon emissions. We're a living wage employer, which automatically has big impacts on the social value because it shows that we're paying above the minimum wage and that all staff are paid a minimum of a fair wage. And that includes a London waiting for those of you in the UK. As mentioned, safety being a key thing. So we're key supporters of the No Fall Foundation. Obviously, one of the biggest risks for our staff is working at height. So anything we can do to try and encourage and promote safer working is a key thing. And then last year, we were honoured to be awarded a Princess Royal Training Award in the UK for our apprenticeship programme. And we were also given a special recognition award at the same event for our diversity and equity programme as well. So as I said, Community Paintbrush or social value is one of our key 4 pillars of a sustainability programme. So here's we'll just explain what Community Paintbrush is, some of the principles behind it, and then sort of some of the successes and the challenges that we face with this in the UK. So Community Paintbrush, we established it in 2012, and the main reason we set it up was as a channel really to deal with our surplus paint and waste paint. Previously, at that stage, waste paint was either going to landfill and then more recently to incineration. And we wanted to try and find a way of stopping good paint being wasted. So that hence Community Paintbrush was established. And the idea was we would donate that to local charities, community groups, good causes, um, just to try and make sure that we maximise the benefit of the paint that we purchased. That now encompasses our full social value program. Um, so everything that we do social value wise, it all is covered under Community Paintbrush. Um, in terms of today, what I'm going to focus on itself is some of the projects that we take part in the local area, rather than things like apprenticeships and employment, just because that's a much bigger story which can take a longer time. So I'm going to focus purely on some of the things that we've done in the community. One of the key things about Community Paintbrush is it's collaborative. So it's not just me directing our teams what to do. It's not our teams deciding what to do, but there's a lot of discussion that goes by. Um, as you would probably, probably imagine, businesses get asked all the time from charities and organisations for support, and you can get kind of drown in some of the requests for support, and also not really understand sort of how your support is having an impact. So what we've decided with Community Paintbrush is we will support events, projects, organisations mainly based on these three pillars. So first of all, if it's a request from our colleagues, so if one of our members of staff says, my child is part of this drama club, they're playing in they act in a real rundown community centre, a bit of paint might help, then we'd consider sort of getting paints and donating paint to that organisation. Um, it might be a request from one of our customers. So our customer may have their own charity partner. They may have their own community organisation where they might need a donation for a Christmas raffle, for example. And again, we'd look at supporting that wherever possible. And then the final one is any request from the local community, so the actual areas in which our offices are based, or where we're working on a longer term. So that might be speaking with community leaders, it might be speaking with the council, leaders of faith, or anybody who's key in that community who might know specific projects which could really benefit from some of the specialist work that we could provide, and have the greatest impact on the greatest number of people. In 2025, projects such as that, we completed about 90 different projects like that last year, which is, each year we're increasing them further. So, we're really proud that the name of our charity or our Community Paintbrush is getting up there, is increasing, the awareness is increasing, and the range of projects which we completed is becoming more and more varied. A couple of examples of things, we get requested paint donation regularly, so that might be being based sort of just outside Bradford. Last year was Bradford Live. It was or Bradford City of Culture. And one of the requests that we were given by local artists who were looking to do painting and improvements in and around the Bradford area. So we were able to provide and donate paints and brushes to those artists so that they could actually conduct their work without any sort of upfront cost for them. We provide, lots of hours of volunteering. Over 15 hours of volunteering was provided by our colleagues. That's things such as going to community centres and actually decorating the community centre, decorating sports clubs, taking part in litter picks, and breakfast mornings and so on. Over 2,000 young people across the UK last year received some form of careers guidance and education from our teams across various sectors, colleges, primary schools, secondary schools. Talked about donations to charity fundraisers. A big thing that we've started doing is supporting a lot of our local food banks. So the food banks in the areas where our offices are, we support the food banks at Christmas and in the other time when they're doing particular drives. And then we also sponsor sports teams of juniors where their parents may work for our business. I think the key thing for this is as well, we've got about 650 staff across the business, including the people who work on the tools, the operatives. The donations and the sponsorship isn't just for the office staff, children, it's for everybody. So everybody within the business has an equal opportunity to request support and receive support. That's all well and good. So we've doing lots of activities. We've done lots of activities for a number of years. The key things that we found as a business, and one of my key challenges when I first started overseeing this was, well, it's all well and good doing this, but what are we getting out of it? What's the community getting out of it? We didn't know how to report what we were doing. We didn't know how to measure the impact or measure, sort of the actual items that we were doing, the projects we were doing. We didn't know what the outcome was, and had no way of collecting any evidence. So previously, we may sponsor a football team, or we may redecorate a community centre, but we'd never capture any data around that. So we'd never be able to explain to a customer or to a colleague or to the community what we'd actually done in that area. So I was set a task of trying to come up with some solutions to those. And I'm fairly sure lots of you understand this is the difficult thing now, is how to actually measure and report on this. Um, so looked at various options. Obviously, the Tom's themes through the social value portal, or Hacked, which is like a housing association social value reporting tool in the UK. In this country, they've been the blueprint. They kind of had a monopoly over recording and reporting of social value. Um, and when we were looking at those, we realized that, well, they were well known. So if I'd have said to a potential customer, we've recorded X amount of social value last year, as recorded on Tom's or through the social value portal, the customers in general would know what we were talking about and would accept that as a verified and acceptable social value. It's well established. There's a consistent approach. So, if I commit social value in London or in Scotland, what we found is that the reporting of that was the same throughout, which made it really easy to report that to our colleagues, to our customers, and to the local community itself. However, what we found as a big problem with it is rather generic, and some of the unique and specific projects that we complete in terms of social value couldn't really be captured necessarily by some of these portals, because they were set around the four key themes that they were established, which made it difficult for us to try and fit, if you like, square pegs in round holes. There's no alignment to the SDGs, which is one of the things that we wanted to do, because we wanted to be able to demonstrate that actually we were focusing on sustainable development. And to be a member of the social value portal was rather costly. So as a business who's trying to do well, what we found was the actual cost of reporting our social value was taking away some funds that we could actually deliver the social value itself. So it was something that we didn't really want to go down. So then I made a first effort at internally reporting and measuring some of our social value, and it was just as raw as an Excel spreadsheet. And there's an example on the board from a couple of years ago of what we did. The key thing about this was it was really good because it was the first time we actually recorded and reported the social value that we were doing, which meant I could report it to our teams across the country, and it enabled our teams to have like a little competition. So if a branch in the northeast, for example, realised that they'd only conducted one social value project, but somewhere in Wales had conducted five, they were able to have a little bit of competition to try and add more social value to their local area, which was a really good thing, and it focused people on directing positive outcomes into the community. One of the other things it did is, because the teams were able to see what other branches were doing, it gave them ideas about what social value they may want to conduct in their local areas. So quite often the conversations we had with our teams were, well, I don't know what social value is. I don't know what you're expecting. Don't know what the people in the communities want. So this helped them sort of focus some of their ideas. It was our first attempt at linking it to SDGs, and you can see that long column at the end of the spreadsheet, which says UN SDGs impacted. But again, this was the first time we did it, and it was one of those where, well, let's try and meet every single SDG through for as much of the social value as possible. Which, when we look back now, it was clearly never going to be realistic, and actually some of the links between the SDGs and the social value were very tedious. It allowed us to group the social variant activities. It allowed us to record volunteer hours. So as well as telling me what projects they'd done, I asked the teams to explain how much time our teams had spent on that project. And then one of the things which was difficult to start with, but we started getting better, was I asked the recipient of the social value to let us know roughly how many people were impacted by the work that we'd done. So we were able to say it was not just one person who's benefited, but there's a group of people. So as a starting point, we were rather impressed with this. It enabled me to produce graphs from internal reports, so the board were able to see everything that we were doing, and were impressed that actually we were doing a lot more than what we thought we were initially. This comes back to what we said right at the start, where you're probably already doing lots of social value. We might not just be capturing it, and that's the biggest issue. So I've got a bit more noise coming from somewhere. However, some of the issues with this, as you can see, it's a very raw spreadsheet. There was no uniformity with the recognized scheme. So as much as I tried to link some of it to the Tom's scheme, so we could at least try and record alongside that, there was no uniformity for it. Which meant it's very difficult to report that to our customers. So we were able to tell our customers or tell the community what activities we'd done, but we weren't actually able to measure anything tangible to report back to them. And as I've said there, is it impossible to meet all SDGs as one business? Probably. Certainly as one individual project, it's impossible. You may argue that actually as a one country, it's impossible to meet all the SDGs. So again, the aspiration was there, the intent was there, but we probably set ourselves too big a goal with that. Which led us to sort of trying to update this and look at how we might be able to improve on it. So what I did was after I used this system for probably 2.5 years of recording different social value activities. So I got a general idea of the sort of themes and the activities that we were doing. And that enabled me to focus and select just a select number of SDGs that we could focus our social value on. So again, this is only focusing on the community paintbrush side, so the actual social value activities. So this I've excluded for this training. I've excluded diversity, equity, inclusion. I've excluded apprenticeships because we measure those against different SDGs. But I wanted to focus purely on the social value activities. First of all, the first thing I said was there are 17 SDGs and we are one painting contractor. So let's not try and cure the world and meet all those requirements. Let's choose the ones which we can have the greatest impact on. And once I've grouped all those social value activities into different general groups, I came up with 3 SDGs that I felt that our social value program targeted. One was no poverty or lowering poverty in our local areas, and making sure that where we could, we were improving the well-being and the economic outcomes for the local people. Quality education was a big thing, whether that's going into schools and educating people, providing careers talks, providing CV workshops to communities and in a housing association, for example. And then the last one was about reducing inequalities. So it was about making sure that we were trying to do social value in areas that required it. So we weren't all targeting the same area. We weren't going to the wealthiest areas in the country, but we're trying to spread our support as far reaching as we can and have the greatest impact. Then the reason there's 4 SDGs on there is because of the nature of community paintbrush, with that collaboration with our customers, with our colleagues, and with our local community. Naturally, it felt that actually 17 and partnerships for the goals is oversees all of our community paintbrush. So whilst we don't do a social value to target 17 specifically, by having that partnership and that collaborative approach, I believe we are working together towards those goals. And what this has enabled us to do is improve our reporting. So now I can report to customers, the board, internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, can report exactly what we've done against each of these 3 SDGs. So our latest approach, and again, this is just one example. So our latest approach is to sort of try and report and measure these social value activities. Now, I'm fortunate that we use a emissions sustainability based platform who have been able to develop a social value reporting tool on there for us as well. So a few years ago, or a couple of years ago, the government released the HMN Treasury's Green Book, which is basically they allocate proxy values for different social activities. And whereas previously Tom's and the Social Value Portal had that data sort of in-house and that was like their monopoly of it, it's now opened up to a wide range of different providers. So working with our sort of sustainability platform, we've been able to sort of modify and make this bit more bespoke for exactly what we want it to report so that we've got that information to go back to customers. This enables us to provide a bit more consistency because we're using the same approach for every activity. There's a bit more accountability about it because we're using the treasury books, we're using the social value model, we are using well recognized in the UK schemes to report social value, which makes it more reliable. So when I'm reporting back to customers, I am confident that the customers are getting the correct information. It aligns with Toms and Hacks. It's very different to the two main schemes in the UK, but it aligns with them. So if I reporting that we have created X amount of social value using this scheme, the report that we produce has the methodology on there, and then the customer is confident that actually what they're getting is real. We've not just made a number and plucked a number out of the air, which means it's recognised by customers, and therefore it's increasing our social value provision, but also supporting us when we are bidding for work or when we're reporting KPIs during projects. It's focused on the specific SDG alignment, which means that we're able to, again, really focus our team's offering of social value. And I've mentioned about the reports that we're able to provide. The cons, obviously, this is still in development. It's still in the early stage of development, so this is very raw at the minute. It's so there's still tweaks that we're making, and as we start adding more data in there, we're realizing that things are missing, things need changing. It is still new and it is different. It's not Tom's, and we can't say it's a Tom's value, which means that we need to provide that assurance and that confidence and the accountability to our customers specifically when we're doing this as part of a contract, so that they can be confident that that social value that we're claiming has actually been provided. So for this, I've just taken an example of the no poverty SDG. So the key areas really that we focus on in terms of the social value element of this is the total non-financial donations. So if we don't, because we donate lots of paint or we donate lots of items to charity raffles, we're able to record that value of the product that we've provided. No poverty also includes some of our wages, which the HR team implement in there. And then the kind of report it produces, it provides us with the total social value delivered. So the using the proxy values, similar to like what Tom's have used. It calculates, that total social value delivered. We can do that as a business for the year, as a business for a time period. We can do it by individual contract as well. We can work out the percentage of the total contract value that has been spent on or being created by social value, because quite often what customers are requesting is that we will provide a percentage of the contract value. So this works out. So we simply enter the contract value into there. It takes the social value delivered, calculates that percentage for us, which we're able to show. The social value return on investment is something that we're trialing at the moment, trying to improve. It's still very raw at the moment, but basically we're trying to work out that for every pound that we spend, what's actually the return of that using the proxy value. And then again, local spend where we've spent money with our local SMEs and so on. The bit that we're trying to get is the bit in the bottom corner. We're trying to get it so it produces graphs similar to this. So we can, rather than having lots of numbers and data like that, we can produce graphs, which really sort of highlights sort of some of the things that we've done. So for us, this is a next, major big step for us to be able to improve the quality of our reporting and mainly improve the reliability of it, so that we've got that assurance behind us. However, there's still lots of issues with that. Again, this is just all very sort of financial and numbers based. And as we'll look when I go through some of the examples, that's a very good example of how we might be able to record social value. It's good for showing to a customer the pounds, if you like, customers and stakeholder sort of shareholders are interested in the financial side of it. So that's very good at working that bit out. However, when it comes to sort of showcasing our social value in the community and with other organisations, that is a bit sort of raw. That's a bit of a background stuff. It doesn't give us what we really want in. So what I'll show you through these case study examples is examples of how community paintbrushes work. So I'm going to give you one real main example, and I'll show you how our current reporting system works with that, but then some of the drawbacks with that and what we do additionally to add some sort of additional benefit for that. So just a bit of background in terms of what we try to do. So obviously getting that data in terms of we know how much money we spent on the paint that we've donated, for example, we know how many hours we've spent volunteering, and we're able to use the social value model and the treasury book to calculate that value. Um, However, we're not sure then what the actual impact of that is. It's all well and good saying we've made £5,000 worth of social value, but my question to that was, well, what so what? What does that actually mean? What does that look like on the ground? Um, so the way community paintbrush now works to make sure it's consistent across the branch, our branches or our teams are either asked to support a community paintbrush project or they find a project they want to support. First thing they need to do is find out what's the requirement from us. Is it donation? Is it time? Is it presentations? Is it what is it that they're wanting from us? Then we want to find out what the benefits of that community paintbrush project are predicted to be. So if, for example, it's a community centre, if they tell us that by decorating the community centre, 300 people who use that a week are going to be in a more relaxed, safer environment, then for us it's a no-brainer. It's something that we can do. Once we've carried out the project, we then make sure that we receive feedback from the recipient. And this is the key thing, because this is how I'm then able to improve the quality of our reporting, to enable us to report some of the outcomes of that project. Here's an example of in Barnsley in South Yorkshire, there's an independent Alzheimer's support group. The picture on the left is what the room looked like beforehand. So this is where people with dementia and Alzheimer's were going for a bit of support, but the rooms were a mess. They were in a nice area. So what we did was working with our paint suppliers. We were able to find colours and paints which are more relaxing for people with Alzheimer's to help support people's with memory issues. And that on the right hand side is that what the room looked like once we'd done it. So that was we donated the paints, we donated the painters, and for 3 days, two painters were on site and they redecorated that room for it. So just an example of what we were able to do. So the most recent case study is we were working for a customer and they came to us and said, we'd like you to help us with some social value. There's a primary school that we're aware of in the area. Their library doesn't have any school books or doesn't have many school books. They're not renewed any school books for ages. There's no money in the school. The school struggles with its literacy rates. Kids are not engaged with reading. Is anything that you can do? So first of all, we looked at what SDG linked at. Well, quality education is clearly the first one, but actually there's probably a smaller link to no poverty and reduced inequalities. We spoke with the school and found out asked what it was that they're wanting. Like, because I could go out and buy all sorts of books, but what were they wanting? They wanted books to support with for the year 6 students getting transitioning to primary school, understanding how to look after their mental health. But they also wanted books that would encourage the younger students to read. So we looked at that's all well and good. We'll buy the books, we'll donate the books, but then how do we report some of those things? How do we report the cost of them, the numbers of people impacted? Did it impact the SATs results? Has it helped with literacy rates? You said they were bad. Have it helped improve? How many hours of learning was provided? Has it actually improved any well-being of the students? So we were able to say straight away, well, we spent £200 on books. That's an easy thing to measure. The school told us that 31 year 6 students were the first ones to read the books, to get the books and read them. So 31 kids were impacted, and they all spent 3 hours in 3 different lessons using those books. So 93 hours of learning was provided just by that one donation. Great outcomes, but then we was like, well, what else can I report from that? So then we spoke to the school to get some, more general feedback. They told us in that class, 9 of the children had special educational needs where reading was a real challenge. 12 of them were from disadvantaged backgrounds where they were from low socio-economic areas. 4 of the children in that class had a below average reading age. The big feedback that we got from the school was actually because of these new books and the fact that they were colourful, they were linked around social media. So yes, they were about well-being, but they were linked to social media, which is the things that the kids were interested in. All those kids were engaged in the reading. All of them started to do some sort of reading. So whilst we can't report the impacts it's had on SATs or literacy rates, the fact that the school was able to see an increase in engagement in reading was something that we could then report to. So that joins in with our financial metrics, but actually we've got a bit of a written story behind it as well, and be able to give a bit of a case study so we could feed back to the customer actually the impact of the work that we've done. Other recent examples we've done, the picture on the left, we worked with an organisation we're a member of to donate lots of food to various food pantries and charities over Christmas. So we spoke with the charities, found out what sort of food goods they required, and we were able to sort of help those people at Christmas time. Through that, we were pointed to another charity where they were opening their doors up on Christmas Day to provide Christmas dinners for people who would either be isolated and alone, or people who would be on the streets. So we were able to fund 20 Christmas dinners for people who were visiting and using that location. The picture in the middle is a football club in Doncaster, in Yorkshire. We're very fortunate that we've got our own a training academy. So what we do is we get our young apprentices from the very start of their time with us at the business to learn how to provide social value. So our apprentices spent one day of their training course at the football club. They repainted the changing rooms, the fences around the pitch and stuff, so that they get used to giving back to that community. So because as they move through our business, they're going to help, hopefully, provide more social value for us. And then the one on the right hand side, we were put in touch with a Buddhist group in Leeds, who that's their temple, like you can see in the picture. Very, very run down, wasn't very welcoming, didn't really have the money to do sort of any decoration works. So we provided them with donation of paint, and our surveyor provided some of his time to teach them how to paint the surfaces. They didn't want us to paint it, they wanted to paint it themselves as a community activity. But our surveyor, who's in the picture there, taught them some of the best tricks of how to paint and coat that temple, just to make sure it was protected and longer lasting. So just to start wrapping up, to give you a couple of key things to take away, we know social value is here to stay. It's becoming more important to everybody, customers, governments in the UK, the EU, and beyond. You're probably already doing lots of social value, so there's no need to rewrite the business strategies. The difficult thing is how to report that and how to sort of monitor what you're doing. And my key thing that I've learned is try and focus on a small number of SDGs rather than trying to act on all 17. One country can't meet them all. One company can't meet them all. Certainly one project that we're working on at a time can't meet all those SDGs. So try and focus on a small number of them, and that will help sort of, if we all do that, that will help ultimately us all meet those SDGs. Just a couple of questions for you to sort of finish off with and try and reflect on, really. So think about what your goals and your aspirations are for your social value program or your social value activities. Think about who you're going to involve in social value delivery. Try and make it collaborative like we did. Are you going to involve your customers, your colleagues, your staff, your local communities? Don't have to involve everybody. You can't say yes to every activity. You can't say yes to every request. But by working with a small group of people, you can make sure that the impact you're having is going to be more direct. And then are you focused on the outcomes, or are you actually focused on the impact of your social value? Because it's all well and good reporting a return on investment, but what's the actual impact of that? And then my call to action to you guys is, what 3 SDGs will you try and promise to tackle? And then there's my LinkedIn QR code. There's the website and the LinkedIn website for our business if you want to check on any of that. I believe we've got a little bit of time, so if anyone's got any questions and want to pop them in the chat, I'm sure Abdul can sort of support and ask any that we might have.
Yeah. Just check the chat, see if there's anything there. So we do have one, Ben. How do you measure the social value delivered in the context of using HM Treasury green usage?
Yeah, so that's the biggest challenge for us. So the Green Book provides with proxy values for certain activities. So for example, it has a value for an apprentice. For every week of an apprenticeship that you provide has a certain proxy value. So then we're able to calculate the number of apprenticeship weeks that we've had, times it by that proxy value. That is our apprenticeship social value. Hours of volunteering has its own value. Hours of visiting schools and providing education on careers has its own value. Like I said, I'm fortunate that our sustainability reporting platform has been able to digest the Green Book and put it into the platform. So that's all done automated for us. So I'm not having to do the calculations myself. but the way that their system works is it's hooked up to it follows the social value model, which is the government sort of policy around this. It uses the green book, and then every time there's any updates, the figures automatically translate through to the platform for us to be able to work out what that social value is. It's very much the same way as what the Tom system works. If anyone's um, used the Tom system before, but that's how we do it. So it is outsourced to a third party platform, but we use them because they've been using we've used them for our emissions reporting, and it just felt a no brainer to put it all in house with them.
Ben, hope that answers the question for Luca Maria Farina. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Good. Any more questions, anyone? You can come off mute and ask them directly if you want.
Abdul?
Yeah.
There is one question in the Q&A or the question and answer. I don't know whether you can see that.
Oh, let me have a look at that one. One sec. There is, yeah, I can see that.
Okay, I'll leave that with you.
Okay, thanks, Merv. Okay, Ben, so another one. In terms of SDGs, it is also possible that sometimes certain SDGs cannot be reached, but as an organization, is it recommended to highlight that we did not achieve these? And then, as most companies hide that while putting it in, at least put certain SDGs out there. That's a question from Vishal.
Yeah, so what I mean, now that we've got this reporting, I'm in the process of redrafting our sustainability report ready to be published, and we've been perfectly honest in our report. So what I've done is I've selected SDGs which I think that we can have an impact on for our environmental base. Three that we can have for our social value that you've seen there. Three that we can have for our apprenticeship and training program. So and there's some crossover between them, but we're basically said we will focus on trying to improve the outcomes of seven or eight of those SDGs. And we've open and honest. We won't be able to meet all 17 of them. One of them about sort of benefiting life on water. Well, we operate on land. Now we can have a negative impact on water, for example, if we cause spillages in waterways and things, but we're not trying to target to improve those or to target towards fixing that SDG. We'd rather focus on a smaller number and say, well, actually, if we work towards improving these few SDGs and do that well, that's better than us trying to sort of paper over 17 of them and actually not having any meaningful impact. So that we just being honest, we've not tried to put all we're not putting all the SDGs in our report and saying we're going to meet them. We're just choosing a select number of them, and this is what we're working towards, and that's how we've decided to go ahead and tackle it.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you, Ben. Any more live questions, guys and girls? No.
Well, if not, my contact details are on there. The slides, I believe, are going to be shared with everybody afterwards as well. So yeah, feel free to get in touch. Like I say, it's a one way of doing it, and that's how we found it is effective for us. But I hope you found that useful. Thank you very much for your time.